The night was cold and full of smoke. The city of Vel Rin, once a glowing alien world of music and lights, was now silent, broken and dark. Only the sound of distant machines filled the air. Human ships floated above the ruins, their white searchlights cutting through the dust. In a narrow alley, hidden behind broken metal scraps and burnt food boxes, two small figures huddled together. One was a little girl, her purple skin dim and her glowing eyes dull from hunger. The other, her older sister, held her tight, trying to keep her warm. "Shh, Leary," the older one whispered. "Don't make a sound. They might hear us." Leary's small stomach growled loudly. Her hands clutched at her belly as tears rolled down her face. "Rena, I'm hungry," she whispered in a weak voice. Rena bit her lip. She hadn't eaten in 3 days either, but she couldn't show her pain. Her sister's breathing was slow and shaky. If she didn't find food soon, Leary wouldn't survive the night. From where they hid, Rena could see flashes of light. Human soldiers were unloading boxes from a crashed cargo ship nearby. The humans had arrived only a month ago, but they already ruled everything. They called it occupation. The aliens called it enslavement. She could see the soldiers laughing as they opened food packs. Some aliens sneaked close to steal leftovers, but one of them was caught and beaten. Rena flinched at the sight. "Don't look," she whispered to Leary, covering her eyes. But Leary moved her hand away and looked again, her eyes filled with tears. "They have food, Rena. Why can't they share?" Rena didn't answer. She didn't have the heart to explain. Humans didn't share, not with aliens like them. Not after the war. Still, she couldn't just sit and watch her sister die. She took a deep breath. "Stay here," she said softly. "Don't move and don't make a sound. I'll find something for you." Leary shook her head. "No, Rena, don't go. The humans will see you. I'll be careful." Rena smiled weakly. "I'm your big sister. I'll be right back." She moved quietly through the shadows. The air smelled of smoke and burned metal. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold ground. She stopped near a pile of boxes, waiting for the humans to turn away. When one soldier laughed and tossed a half-eaten ration bar aside, Rena's heart raced. That could be enough. She crawled forward and reached out, her trembling hand inches away from the food. Then, "Hey, what was that?" a voice shouted. A beam of white light swept over her. Rena froze like a statue. The soldier pointed his weapon toward the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Then a soft cry came from the alley. Leary. She had called out for her sister. "Rena." The child's voice echoed through the ruins. The soldier turned his light toward the sound. Rena's heart stopped. "No, no, no, no." She ran back to the alley as fast as she could, grabbed Leary and covered her mouth. "Quiet," she whispered, shaking. Heavy footsteps came closer. The light grew brighter. Rena's wings curled around her sister protectively. The human stopped a few steps away. His armor gleamed under the white beam. He held a plasma rifle ready to fire. His eyes scanned the dark corners until they fell on them. Two small, terrified alien girls. Rena didn't move. She didn't breathe. The human's face was hidden behind a helmet. His voice was calm but cold. "Step out slowly." Rena didn't answer. She pulled Leary closer, whispering, "Don't look at him." The man lowered his weapon slightly. He spoke again, quieter this time. "You're not soldiers." Rena looked up with wide, fearful eyes. The helmet's visor reflected her trembling face. She saw no anger, no cruelty, only something strange in his expression. The man reached into a pouch at his side. Rena flinched, expecting a weapon, but instead he tossed something toward her, a small silver packet that landed by her feet. It was food. He stood there for a moment, watching. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Rena stared after him, confused. Why would a human soldier help them? She tore open the packet with shaking hands. Inside was a small nutrition bar. It smelled strange, but Leary's eyes lit up. "Eat," Rena said softly, handing it to her. Leary took a bite, her eyes closing as she chewed. "It's good," she whispered weakly. "Thank you." Rena smiled through tears. "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank the human." But deep inside, her heart was full of questions. Who was he? Why did he help them? Humans hated her kind. She had seen it with her own eyes. As the night grew colder, she held Leary close again. The food gave them a little strength, but not peace. Rena knew that kindness from a human could be dangerous. Maybe he wanted something in return. Maybe it was a trick. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about his voice. It wasn't cruel. It sounded tired. In the distance, thunder rolled through the smoky sky. The war hadn't ended. It had only gone quiet for a while. Rena whispered to her sister, "Sleep now. Tomorrow I'll find us something better." But when she closed her eyes, the image of the human soldier stayed in her mind, his armor shining, his silence heavy, his act of mercy strange and confusing. And for the first time in many nights, Rena felt something she didn't understand, hope. Yet somewhere deep inside, she also felt fear because in this world every kindness had a price. The next morning, the sky of Velrin was gray and silent. Cold wind carried the smell of smoke and metal. Rena sat awake holding her sister close. Leary slept with crumbs on her face, the last pieces of the human ration still clutched in her tiny hand. Rena hadn't slept. She kept thinking about the human who gave them food. His armor, his calm voice, and the strange kindness in his eyes, it made no sense. Humans were the reason their home was destroyed. Humans had taken everything from them. Why had that one helped? When the first light of day touched the broken city, Rena peeked out of the alley. The humans were still there, building their camp around the old temple ruins. Drones buzzed above, scanning for any aliens who might be hiding. She saw him again, the same human soldier. He stood alone near a supply truck, removing his helmet. His face was pale, with short brown hair and tired eyes. He didn't look like a monster, he looked lost. Rena watched from a distance, trying to understand him. He didn't talk much to the other soldiers. He looked up at the alien sky like he was thinking about something far away. Leary woke up and rubbed her eyes. "Rena, is he there?" "Yes," Rena whispered. "Stay quiet." The girl nodded and hid behind her sister's wings. Rena felt something strange, curiosity mixed with fear. She wanted to thank him but didn't know how. If the other soldiers saw her, they would kill her. She remembered the screams of others who tried to ask for mercy. Humans had no mercy for her kind, or maybe only this one did. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began to fade again. The humans were busy, fixing machines, guarding the camp. The soldier, the one called Reed as she overheard others calling him, sat alone near the ruins of a fountain. He took off his gloves and stared at his hands for a long time. Then something happened that froze Rena's heart. Leary coughed. Loudly. Rena pressed her hand over the child's mouth, but it was too late. Reed turned his head. His sharp eyes scanned the shadows. "Someone there?" he called out, standing up. His hand reached for his rifle. Rena's pulse quickened. She pulled Leary deeper into the alley, but a loose metal can rolled away from her foot. It made a loud clatter. Reed followed the sound slowly. He raised his weapon, his steps quiet but firm. Rena whispered to Leary, "Don't move. Don't breathe." The man stopped at the corner of the alley. He saw movement, a shimmer of blue skin and frightened eyes. He lowered his rifle a little. "You again," he said softly. "You shouldn't be here." Rena stood, trembling, holding Leary behind her. "Please, we'll go." "Don't hurt us," Reed sighed. His voice sounded tired, not angry. "If my commander finds you, he will." "Then why did you feed us?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, surprised by her question. "Because I don't follow all orders anymore." Rena frowned. "You are human. You always follow orders." Reed gave a small, bitter smile. "Not this time." He looked around and pulled a small food pack from his belt. "Here, take this and leave before someone sees." Rena hesitated. "What if it's poison?" He gave a short, dry laugh. "It's just food. I don't poison children." She slowly stepped forward and took it. Their hands almost touched. For a moment, she saw something in his eyes. Pain, guilt, and something even deeper, regret. Leary peeked from behind her sister and whispered, "Thank you, human." Reed blinked, almost startled by her voice. He looked at the small alien child, weak but smiling. Something inside him softened. He crouched down and said quietly, "You shouldn't thank me. I'm not a good man." Leary tilted her head. "You gave food. Good men give food." For a moment, Reed couldn't speak. He stood up quickly and turned away. "Go," he said firmly. "Don't come back here." Rena watched him walk away, the food pack still warm in her hands. She didn't understand him. Later, as night fell again, Rena and Leary ate slowly in their hiding place. Leary was smiling, but Rena was lost in thought. "Do you think he'll help us again?" Leary asked. Rena shook her head. "No, we shouldn't depend on humans." They always take something in return, but deep down she knew something had changed. That man, Captain Reed, was not like the others. He looked like someone who had lost everything, too. As she held Leary close, she thought about his words. I don't follow all orders anymore. What had he meant by that? What orders? Far away, Reed sat by a dying fire. He looked at the stars that didn't belong to his world. His commander had told him they were peacekeepers, but all he saw was destruction. He rubbed his eyes. Tired of pretending that his orders made sense, he remembered the little alien girl's voice. Good men give food. He whispered to himself, I'm not good, kid. But as he stared into the night, he wasn't sure anymore. The third night came colder than the others. The wind carried the smell of ash and burned oil through the ruins of Velrin. The stars above the destroyed city looked dim and tired. Rena sat with Leary inside their small hiding place made of metal scraps. The little alien girl was shivering under a torn blanket, her skin pale and dry. Her breathing was weak. Leary, please eat, Rena whispered, holding out a small piece of food left from the last ration pack. Leary shook her head slowly. I don't want it. My belly hurts. Rena touched her forehead. It was hot. Too hot. Her heart started to race. You're burning up, she said softly. Fear crept into her voice. She looked around helplessly. They had no medicine, no clean water, and no place safe enough to rest. The humans had taken all the medical supplies. The alien clinics were gone. Rena clenched her fists. She couldn't just watch her sister die. She remembered the human, Captain Reed, the soldier who had fed them twice. She didn't trust him, but he was the only one who had shown mercy. Maybe he could help again. Maybe he could save Leary, but at what cost? She looked down at her own hands, thin, shaking, dirty. Her body was weak, but her will wasn't. If it meant saving her sister, she would give up everything. Stay here, she whispered to Leary. I'll come back soon. Leary opened her eyes halfway. Where are you going? Rena brushed her sister's hair gently. To find help. For you. The child tried to hold her arm, but Rena kissed her forehead and stood up. Her wings trembled as she walked into the dark streets. The human camp was lit by blue lights and surrounded by metal fences. Drones flew above, scanning for intruders. Rena moved through the shadows like a ghost, her heart pounding with every step. She reached the edge of the fence and crouched low, watching the soldiers move. They were laughing, eating, drinking, not caring about the world they had destroyed. Her eyes searched for one man, Captain Reed. Then she saw him, sitting near a supply truck, checking his wrist tablet. His face was half lit by the glow of the screen. Rena took a deep breath and stepped forward. The nearest guard shouted, Who's there? She froze, then raised her trembling hands. Please, I mean no harm. The guard lifted his gun. An alien? Get back. Before he could fire, Reed turned quickly. His eyes widened when he saw her. Wait, he said sharply. Don't shoot! The guard hesitated. Sir, it's one of them. I said don't shoot, Reed ordered. His voice was cold and firm. The guard lowered his gun reluctantly. Rena took a shaky step forward. My sister. She's dying, please. Her voice cracked as she spoke. She's burning with fever. I don't have anything left. Reed looked around, making sure no one was watching too closely. You shouldn't have come here, he whispered harshly. If the commander sees you, we're both dead. I don't care, she said, her eyes full of tears. Help her, please, you're the only one who can. He stared at her for a moment. Then quietly he asked, Why me? Rena swallowed hard. Because you gave her food. You didn't kill us. That means something. Reed's expression softened for a second, but he quickly looked away. If I bring her here, they'll take her for experiments. They'll hurt her. Rena's heart sank. Then take me instead. He blinked. What? She took a deep breath. Take me, do whatever you want. Just give her medicine, food, anything to make her live. Reed looked stunned. You think I would trade your life like that? Rena's eyes burned with desperation. I'll do anything. Work for you, obey your orders, anything you ask. Just save her. For a long moment, Reed said nothing. The night seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he sighed. Where is she? Rena looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. She's hiding near the old bridge. Please, follow me, he shook his head. I can't leave the camp now. There are cameras everywhere. Bring her to the south gate at midnight. I'll be there. Rena hesitated. You promise? I don't make promises, he said quietly, but I'll be there. She nodded slowly and backed away into the shadows. That night, the wind howled through the ruins. Rena carried Leary in her arms, weak and half-conscious, toward the south gate. The lights from the human camp glowed in the distance like stars trapped on the ground. Reed was waiting, just as he said. He opened a small gate and motioned her in quickly. "Come on. Be quiet." Inside, the air smelled of metal and smoke. Rena looked around, terrified but determined. Reed led them to a small storage room behind the medical tent. He knelt beside Leary and opened a case. Inside were small vials of glowing blue medicine. "This is human-grade serum. It should help her fever." Rena watched as he injected the medicine carefully into her sister's arm. Leary winced but soon breathed easier. Her body stopped shaking. Tears filled Rena's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Reed stood up, avoiding her gaze. "She needs rest. You can stay here tonight, but no one can see you. If my commander finds out, he'll hang me for treason." Rena nodded quickly. "I won't let anyone know." As he turned to leave, she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Reed stopped at the door. "Because I'm tired of watching children die." He left before she could answer. Rena looked at Leary sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. She knelt beside her and whispered, "You'll live now, even if I must pay for it." Her eyes drifted toward the door where Reed had gone. She didn't know if he was her savior or her doom, but she knew one thing: she had made her choice. The night was long, but for the first time in many days, Rena slept. She lay beside her sister Leary on a thin blanket inside the storage tent. The air smelled of oil and smoke, but it was warm, and that warmth felt like a miracle. Leary's fever had faded, her breathing steady and calm. When dawn broke, soft orange light entered through the tent's torn flap. Rena woke slowly, blinking at the light. For a few seconds she forgot where she was. Then the sound of human boots outside reminded her. She was in the enemy's camp. Her body tensed. She looked around. The storage tent was full of human supplies, medicine, tools, food packs. Everything her people had lost now belonged to humans. She turned and saw Leary still sleeping peacefully. Her lips were no longer pale. For a moment Rena smiled, then she heard a voice outside. "Captain Reed, Commander wants your report in 5 minutes." Her heart skipped. Reed. He had kept his promise. He had saved Leary. Rena peeked through the small gap in the tent. Reed stood near a line of armored soldiers, his helmet off, his face serious and calm. His uniform was neat, but his eyes looked heavy, like someone carrying a secret too big to bear. She saw the commander, a tall man with sharp features, step out of his tent. His voice was loud. "Captain Reed, you've been leaving camp perimeter at night again." Rena froze. Reed's voice was firm. "Sir, I was checking for survivors near the bridge." "Standard procedure. Don't lie to me," the commander said, stepping closer. "You've gone against orders before. You're too soft with the aliens. You think I don't know that?" Rena's heart raced. If they found out about her and Leary, they would be executed, and Reed with them. Reed didn't move. "With respect, sir, we're supposed to secure this city, not starve children." The commander's face darkened. "Your job is to obey, not to play savior to those things." Those words cut through Rena like a blade. Those things. That's what they called her kind. Not people, not lives, just things. Reed's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The commander glared at him for a moment longer, then barked, "Next time you disobey, I'll have you sent to the outer colonies." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Reed said quietly. The commander left, muttering curses under his breath. Rena slowly let out the breath she was holding. She had almost been discovered, and Reed had protected her without saying a word about her or Leary. When the camp grew quiet again, Reed entered the storage tent. His boots were muddy, his eyes tired. He looked at Rena, who stood up quickly. "You shouldn't be seen here," he said in a low voice. "You have to hide better during the day." "I heard everything," she whispered. "You lied for us," he shrugged slightly. "I didn't do it for thanks." "You could have been punished." "I already am," he said, sitting down heavily on a crate. Rena frowned. "What do you mean?" He stared at his hands. "I've seen too much. Too many burned cities, too many children left to die. Orders tell me to ignore it. But I can't." There was silence. Only the wind rattled the tent flaps. "You were a soldier before the war?" Rena asked softly. Reed nodded. "Back on Earth. I believed we were protecting peace. But out here?" His voice trailed off. Out here, peace means killing anyone who isn't human. Rena looked down. Your people destroyed ours. I know, he said quietly, and I can't change that. But I can choose not to make it worse. Rena studied him for a long moment. He wasn't like the others. His eyes weren't cruel, they were sad, full of guilt. Leary stirred and opened her eyes. Rena? She whispered weakly. Rena knelt beside her. I'm here, little one. Reed moved closer. How do you feel? Leary blinked up at him. Better, she smiled faintly. You helped me again. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're strong. That's why. Leary giggled softly. Rena says humans don't help aliens. Rena's face turned red. Leary, Reed chuckled quietly. She's not wrong. Then he looked at Rena. I'm breaking every rule by keeping you here. If they find out, they'll call me a traitor. Rena's eyes filled with guilt. Then, maybe we should go. He shook his head. No, not yet. It's not safe outside the city. There are patrols everywhere. You'll die before you reach the mountains. Then what do we do? Rena asked. Reed rubbed his forehead. I don't know, maybe. Maybe I can find a ship, a supply vessel heading off-world. I could get you a pass. Rena stared at him in disbelief. You'd do that for us? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Maybe that's the only thing I can still do right. Rena felt her throat tighten. Why? She whispered. Why help us? You owe us nothing. He looked at her, his voice quiet. Because when your sister smiled at me, it reminded me of my daughter. Rena froze. You have a child? I had one, he said softly. Before the war, she died when the rebels hit our ship. There was silence again. Thick, heavy silence. Rena finally said, I'm sorry. Reed nodded once. So am I. He stood and walked toward the door. I'll bring more medicine and food tonight. Don't leave this tent. If anyone asks, this room's locked for repair. Rena wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. As he stepped outside, she whispered, You're not like the others, Reed. He stopped, looking back over his shoulder. Don't believe that, he said softly. Even good men do terrible things. Then he was gone. When night came, Rena looked at Leary sleeping beside her and thought of Reed's face, the tired soldier who broke rules to save an alien child. She didn't know what his next choice would be, but she knew one thing. In a world filled with hate, he had done something no one else dared to do. He had chosen compassion, and choices like that always came with a price. The morning sun rose behind thick gray clouds, turning the sky into a dull silver sheet. The human camp was alive with noise, soldiers shouting, engines roaring, metal tools clanging. Inside the small storage tent, Rena stayed silent. She listened carefully to the footsteps outside, holding her breath whenever someone passed too close. Leary sat beside her, eating quietly from a ration pack Reed had left for them. Rena, Leary whispered softly. When will we leave this place? Rena brushed a strand of hair from her sister's face. Soon, she said, forcing a small smile. Captain Reed said he'll help us find a ship. Leary's eyes brightened. He's a good human. Rena nodded, though her heart felt heavy. Yes, but good humans are rare. Outside, the commander's voice suddenly thundered through the camp. Everyone, gather near the command tent. Inspection now. Rena froze. She peeked through the slit in the tent flap. The commander stood tall, flanked by guards and a stranger in a darker uniform, a higher officer. His armor had red markings and his cold eyes scanned the camp like a hawk. Reed stood among the soldiers, stiff and silent. The officer's voice was sharp. We've received reports that alien survivors have been hiding near this zone. Some of them may be in contact with human personnel. Rena's heart began to race. She gripped Leary's hand. The officer continued, pacing slowly. If any soldier is discovered helping the enemy, he will be charged with treason and executed. The commander nodded. Yes, sir. Reed kept his face blank, but his hands tightened into fists. The officer's eyes moved across the line of soldiers until they stopped on Reed. Captain Reed, he said suddenly. You've been leaving camp at night, haven't you? Reed met his gaze without fear. I was scouting the ruins for survivors. Survivors? The officer repeated with a cruel smile. Interesting. Did you find any? Reed hesitated just for a second, too long. The officer's smile widened. I see. He turned to the commander. Search his quarters. Rena's stomach dropped. Her breath caught in her throat. If they found anything, food missing, medical supplies gone, they'd know. The commander saluted and barked. Search team. Move. Reed didn't move. His jaw was tight, his eyes distant. Rena whispered, no. Leary looked up, frightened. Rena, what's happening? Quiet, Rena said, pulling her close. Don't make a sound. Minutes later, the soldiers opened Reed's tent. They searched everything. Under the cot, inside boxes, behind the shelves. Then one of them shouted, Sir! We found unauthorized medical vials and missing food rations. The officer's expression turned hard. Bring him. Two soldiers grabbed Reed by the arms. The commander frowned. Captain, you know the law. Supplying alien life is forbidden. Reed didn't struggle. He said calmly, If giving food to a starving child is a crime, then I accept it. The officer stepped closer, his voice low and cold. You think mercy makes you a hero? No, Captain. It makes you weak, he motioned to the guards. Lock him in the command cell until we decide what to do with him. They dragged Reed away. Rena's heart pounded so loudly she thought the soldiers would hear it. She pressed her hands over her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Leary clutched her sleeve. Rena, they took him. Why? Rena's eyes filled with tears. Because he helped us. She stood up, shaking. He saved you, and now they'll kill him for it. That night the camp was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy, full of danger. Rena paced inside the tent, thinking, her mind burning with fear and guilt. Leary was half asleep beside her, whispering, He'll be okay. Right? Rena didn't answer. She couldn't lie. Finally, she made up her mind. She couldn't stay hidden anymore. Reed had risked his life for them. She couldn't let him die alone. She stepped outside, pulling her hood low and her wings tight against her back. The camp was dim under the moonlight. Two guards stood near the command cell, their rifles leaning against the wall. Rena crouched behind a stack of metal crates, watching them. She needed a distraction. Her eyes darted around and spotted a fuel drum nearby. She picked up a small rock and threw it with all her strength. Clang! The noise echoed across the camp. The guards turned instantly. What was that? One said, grabbing his gun. They moved toward the sound. Rena rushed forward silently and slipped behind the tent flap. Inside the cell, Reed sat on the ground, his hands bound, his face bruised. When he saw her, his eyes widened. What are you doing here? He whispered harshly. I came to get you out, she said. He shook his head. No, if they find you here, they'll kill you both. They'll kill you anyway, she hissed. You saved my sister, Reed. Let me save you now. Reed gave a small, tired smile. You shouldn't waste your chance. Take Leary and go. There's a ship leaving tomorrow. In my jacket, there's a chip. It'll get you past the scanners. Rena blinked back tears. You knew this would happen. I hoped it wouldn't, he said quietly. But some choices we can't undo. The sound of boots echoed nearby. The guards were returning. Reed's eyes hardened. Go, Rena, now, she shook her head. I won't leave you, he whispered sharply. If you die here, everything I did means nothing. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached through the bars and grabbed his hand. I'll come back for you, she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently. No, you won't. You'll live. That's all that matters. The voices outside grew louder. Rena pulled her hood back up and slipped away into the shadows just as the guards turned the corner. Reed watched her disappear, his heart heavy. Back in the storage tent, Rena held Leary close, her tears silent. The little girl whispered, Where's Captain Reed? Rena looked at the door, her voice trembling. He's still fighting. For us. She closed her eyes and made a promise. I won't let his kindness die in this place. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. A storm was coming, one that would change all their fates. The storm came with no warning. Lightning cracked across the sky of Velrin, flashing against broken towers and the wreckage of the human base. The rain fell heavy, washing blood and ash into the streets. Inside a ruined building near the edge of the city, Rena sat with Leary wrapped in her arms. The little alien girl slept, her face pale, her small hands clutching the human identification chip Reed had given them. Rena couldn't sleep. Her thoughts burned like fire. Reed was still in the camp, alone, beaten, locked away. She could still see his face behind those iron bars, his quiet eyes when he said, If you die here, everything I did means nothing. He had chosen mercy over orders, and now he would die for it. Rena stood up and looked at Leary. The ship Reed had spoken of would leave in a few hours. That ship could take them off this cursed planet to safety. Freedom was so close she could almost feel it. But every time she looked at that ship, she saw Reed's hand giving it to her. She heard his voice telling her to live. She whispered to herself, "He saved us. I can't just run." She knelt beside her sister and gently shook her awake. "Leary, listen to me." Leary rubbed her eyes. "What's wrong?" "You have to go to the ship," Rena said softly. "There's a human cargo transport leaving at dawn. Take this chip and give it to the officer. Don't speak, just go." Leary blinked, confused. "What about you?" Rena smiled sadly. "I have something to do." The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "No, Rena. Don't leave me. They'll kill you." Rena pulled her into a tight hug. "I promised you a future. That's why I have to do this." Leary shook her head and clung to her. "You can't help him. He's human." Rena looked out at the rain, her voice breaking. "He's not just human. He's the only one who remembered what mercy means." She kissed her sister's forehead. "Go when the storm calms. Hide until then. I'll find you again, I swear." Leary cried quietly, holding the chip to her chest as Rena wrapped her in the blanket and whispered one last, "I love you." Then Rena turned and disappeared into the storm. The camp was chaos. Wind tore at tents. Lightning struck the ground and alarms blared across the human base. Soldiers rushed to secure their equipment. As the storm worsened, no one noticed the small shadow that moved along the outer fence. Rena slipped through a gap where lightning had split the metal open. Her feet sank into the mud as she crept through the camp, soaked but silent. The air smelled of fuel and burning. She moved between trucks and supply crates, avoiding the light of patrol drones. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would give her away. Finally, she saw the command cell, a gray metal structure half buried near the center of the camp. 2 guards stood outside, their rifles glowing blue under the rain. She needed a distraction. Rena glanced around and saw a generator sparking nearby. Carefully, she grabbed a long iron rod from the ground and pushed it into the wires. Sparks exploded. The generator flared and died. The guards cursed and ran toward it, shouting orders. Rena sprinted to the cell door. It was locked with a digital keypad. She pressed her ear against the metal and heard faint coughing inside. "Reed," she whispered urgently. A pause. Then his weak voice. "Rena? No. You shouldn't be here." She smiled through the rain. "You really thought I'd leave you behind?" "You'll die," he said. "You and your sister, she's safe. You made sure of that. Now it's my turn." Rena looked at the keypad, her mind racing. She remembered how the guards pressed the buttons earlier. 4 numbers, 2 blinks, 1 beep. She guessed quickly. First try, denied. Second try, error. Then lightning struck nearby, and the system flickered. She tried once more, 3107. The lock clicked. The door opened with a hiss. Reed was sitting against the wall, his face bruised, blood running from a cut near his temple. He stared at her in disbelief. "You came back." Rena stepped inside, grabbing his arm. "Can you walk?" He nodded weakly. "Barely." "Then let's go." She pulled him up, and they slipped into the storm again. Alarms started to sound. The flicker of the broken generator had drawn attention. Soldiers shouted across the camp. They ran through the rain, ducking behind vehicles and broken walls. Reed moved slowly, limping, but he refused to stop. At one point, Rena pressed him against a wall, holding him close as a patrol drone hovered above. The light passed inches from their faces before drifting away. Reed whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Rena whispered back, "Then stop saving me so I don't have to return the favor." He gave a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "You're stubborn." "Learned from you." They reached the outer fence. Rena helped him crawl through the bent metal, then they stumbled toward the hills. In the distance, the human transport ship's lights glowed faintly through the storm clouds. "Your sister?" Reed asked between breaths. "She's heading there," Rena said. "If we hurry, we can catch her before it leaves." But then a shout rang out behind them. "There! Stop them!" Gunfire burst through the rain. Bolts of blue plasma tore through the mud around them. Rena grabbed Reed's arm and ran. A plasma shot hit the ground close to her foot, throwing her forward. She fell, mud splashing across her face. Reed turned back, shielding her with his own body as the next shot came. It hit his shoulder. He grunted but didn't fall. "Keep moving," he shouted. They reached the base of the hill, both gasping for air. The ship's engines roared above, preparing for takeoff. Rena turned to him. "We're almost there." Reed smiled faintly, his uniform soaked with blood. "Go. Take her. And leave this world." "I'm not leaving you." He shook his head, his voice weak. "I was never meant to leave, but you can start over." Rena's eyes burned. "You said good men do terrible things, but not you." He smiled faintly. "You're wrong. I've done plenty." Then he pressed something cold into her hand, a small tag with his name on it. "So you don't forget." Tears mixed with rain as Rena whispered, "I'll never forget." The ship's ramp opened in the distance. Leary stood there, waving desperately. Rena turned back to Reed, her heart breaking. "Come with us." He shook his head, sinking to the ground. "Go." She hesitated for only a moment. Then she ran. Through mud, through wind, through the storm, carrying his tag close to her heart. Behind her, the human camp burned in the lightning storm. Ahead of her, the ship's engines ignited, glowing bright as dawn. Rena stepped inside, holding Leary tight as the door closed. The ship rose into the dark sky, leaving the planet behind. The ship rose through clouds heavy with smoke and lightning. Rena sat near the back, holding Leary close as the metal walls shook from the storm. The sound of engines roared in her ears, but her mind was somewhere else, back on the ground where she had left him. Captain Reed. The human who had broken his orders to save them. The man who had stayed behind. She looked down at the small silver tag in her hand, his name carved into the metal. Reed C. It was all she had left of him. Leary stirred against her chest. "Rena, are we safe now?" Rena took a shaky breath. "Yes, little one. We're leaving Velrin." The girl smiled weakly, then looked out the small window beside them. The planet was shrinking below, a ball of gray dust and flickering fires disappearing into the black sea of space. Rena felt both relief and sorrow. She had dreamed of escaping that place her whole life, but freedom felt empty when someone had died to give it to her. Hours passed in silence. Most of the passengers on the ship were refugees, aliens from different races, quiet and hollow-eyed. No one spoke. No one dared to hope yet. A human pilot's voice came over the speakers. "This is cargo transport K-17 leaving occupied Sector 4. Next stop, Station Eros 9 for resupply, then outer orbit colonies." The mention of humans made Rena's stomach tighten. She kept her hood low and her wings hidden beneath her coat. If anyone realized she wasn't human, she could be thrown out the airlock. But she didn't care. Not anymore. She just wanted Leary safe. Leary leaned her head against Rena's shoulder. "Will Captain Reed come too?" she whispered softly. Rena froze. "No," she said after a long pause. "He can't." "Why?" "Because..." Rena's voice broke. "He stayed behind to protect us." Leary's eyes filled with tears. "He promised we'd see the stars together." Rena brushed her cheek gently. "He kept that promise. Look." She pointed toward the window where the stars shone like diamonds across the black sky. "See? He gave us this." Leary smiled through her tears. "Do you think he can see us from down there?" Rena swallowed hard. "Maybe not with his eyes, but I think his soul already lives among the stars." As the ship drifted into orbit, Rena stood and walked to the window by the rear hatch. The view was endless, space stretching out forever, full of color and silence. She opened her palm, staring at the tag again. The metal was cold, but it pulsed faintly with warmth where her hand touched it, as if his memory still carried a heartbeat. In her mind, she could still hear his voice. Calm, steady, full of quiet sadness. You'll live. That's all that matters. A tear slid down her cheek. She whispered, "You were wrong, Reed. It mattered to me too." The engines hummed softly beneath her feet, but the noise faded into the background. All she could think about was that moment in the rain, the way he smiled when he knew he wouldn't make it. She closed her eyes and whispered a silent promise to the stars. "I'll live. For both of us." When the ship landed at Station Eros 9, a massive space hub floating above a blue gas planet, the passengers were led out for medical checks and registration. Humans and aliens moved through separate lines. Rena pulled her hood tighter and kept her face down, pretending to be human. Leary clung to her hand. A mechanical voice scanned each person. Identity confirmed. Clearance accepted. When it was Rena's turn, she held up the chip Reed had given her. The scanner blinked red, then turned green. Captain Reed authorization code recognized, human escort confirmed. Rena's throat tightened. His code still worked. He had planned everything, even her escape. The officer handed her a data card. "You're clear. Next ship leaves for the outer colonies in 6 hours." "Thank you," Rena whispered, her voice trembling. They found a quiet corner of the station where they could rest. Rena sat on a bench, staring at the metal floor. Leary played quietly with a small piece of glass, drawing tiny stars in the air with her finger. The hum of the station was soft, almost peaceful. For the first time, Rena allowed herself to breathe. Leary looked up suddenly. "Rena, look!" Rena turned her head toward a nearby hollow screen. The news played quietly. "Human military outpost on Velrin destroyed by lightning storm. All personnel presumed lost." Her heart stopped. Reed's base. She pressed her hand against her mouth to hold back a sob. The voice of the reporter continued. Only one signal was recorded before the destruction, a distress beacon transmitting an unknown alien code. Rena blinked, her eyes filling with tears. "An alien code," she whispered. "That was him. He sent it for us." Leary hugged her tightly. "He said goodbye." Rena held her sister and cried silently as the stars outside glowed brighter through the glass dome above them. 6 hours later, they boarded the final ship to the colonies. It was larger and quieter than the first one. Rena sat by the window again, holding the tag close. As the engines powered up, she whispered softly to herself, "Goodbye, Reed." Leary looked up. "What will we do now?" Rena took a deep breath. "We'll live. We'll build a new life. And someday, we'll tell your children about a human who remembered kindness when the whole galaxy forgot it." The little girl smiled. "Can I tell them he was my friend?" Rena nodded, smiling through tears. "Yes, Leary, he was our friend." The ship broke through the clouds of the station and rose into deep space. Rena watched as the stars stretched out before them. Millions of lights in endless darkness. She touched the tag again, whispering like a prayer. "Thank you for teaching me that even in war, mercy can still live." Leary rested her head on her lap and fell asleep. The stars reflected in her silver eyes like tiny suns. Outside, the engines flared and the ship vanished into the black, leaving a glowing trail behind. In that trail, Rena imagined his spirit flying beside them, a soldier who had found peace at last. And somewhere in the endless sky of stars, a faint echo whispered back, "You lived. That's all that matters, the end."